What is up, Earthnoids and Spacenoids? I am just a simple new type, and in this episode, we are diving into Mobile Suit Gundam U.C. Hardgraph Iron Mustang. This story follows Chief Petty Officer Cuaran and the 908th Mobile Reconnaissance Company. Maybe it's Cuaran. His name does sound Spanish in origin. In February, after the signing of the Antarctic Treaty, Zeon began their Earth invasion, led by Earth Attack Force Commander Garma Zabi. We will see a boots-on-the-ground perspective of Zeon's third Earth invasion. So let's get into this. Before we begin, our protagonist Cuaran and his comrades Sol and Guile are already established characters. Remember the episode of Mobile Suit Gundam where a rogue team of WAPA pilots placed bombs all over the RX-78 Gundam? That was Cuaran and his team. March 3rd, UC-0079. The Principality of Zeon stages its first landing operation into Central Asia. 10 days later, they begin the second landing operation in North America. And 1 week after that, on March 18th, UC-0079, the third landing operation begins. Both the third and second landing operation involve taking over California base and destroying EFF food supplies. Cuaran preps his team. One of his soldiers mentions that their commanding officer is a part of the lineage of military officers. They wonder why then was she assigned to their humble recon unit. The team prepare for Earth atmospheric entry. Next to Cuaran is Petty Officer 2nd Class Frostel. They hit atmospheric turbulence. Frostel is nervous and asks why Cuaran isn't afraid. He said that he will die riding the Mustang. The Mustang is the name he has given to the WAPA, and I don't believe it is an official name for the vehicle. They make their landing. Cuaran pets and talks to his Mustang. Oh boy, it's one of those. They begin the landing operation. All Cuaran wants to do is finish so they can get back to space. But he soon realizes that this is going to be a long operation. Once they began occupying Earth, the Spacenoids realized just how big of a territory they needed to occupy, and thus thinning out Zeon forces. This is where the Recon Squad comes in. The Recon team will help with logistics and ensure that they aren't sending another squad to their deaths for occupied territory that doesn't even matter. 5 months later. August 12th, UC-0079. Cuaran is on the outskirts of Area 17, surveying the area. Commander Cameron instructs the team to head to Area 6, where Zaku and its pilot was captured by EFF. He is wondering why send Cuaran's team, knowing that they will most likely run into combat, and they are a recon team. Cameron says that sometimes you have to get your hands dirty, and you must recon until the very end. He wants Guile to assist them in the Zaku, but she denies his request. She is yelling all of this throughout the radio, and Cuaran seems to be over her orders. His team heads out on their new mission as we get Cuaran's internal monologue about hating it on Earth. He finds it dirty and the air damp. The team makes it to the location. They scout on the hills and they see an EFF squad with their stolen Zaku and a few Type 61 tanks. Sol notes that the Lugan spotted another EFF team not too far from their location. If they attack this squad, the second unit can make it to their location in 15 minutes. They don't have any good weapons and are very underprepared. The Lugan is a recon aircraft used by Zeon. It has 2 radars connected to the struts which can be positioned above or below the fuselage. There are 2 cockpits, one for the pilot and one for someone to focus on recon. Even though it is designed for recon, it still is equipped with a 20mm machine gun, a missile launcher, and some bombs. We have seen these used throughout OG Gundam, and we see the Southern Cross Corps use them in Kuguru's Doan's Island. Sol and Cuaran joke about being expendable. Mobility is the only thing they have an advantage over EFF in this situation. The first team of 3 will go out and cause chaos and retreat instantly. The team does that and begins their assault. One of the Type 61 tanks begins firing back. They make the retreat. That is when the second team will come in and ambush the Type 61 tanks. They place a bomb on one tank, causing it to crash into the other tanks. One tanker gets out and tries to shoot, but he is instantly shot. The 908th has a sniper waiting in the hills. Cuaran goes into the tent where an EFF soldier comes at him with a shovel. He shoots him and frees the Zaku pilot, but a Type 61 tank is pointing its barrels right at the Zeon soldiers. Suddenly, the tank is taken out. It is Guile in the Zaku. Cuaran tells the POW to go back into his Zaku. He seems hesitant. He gets in and walks away. It seems that war has gotten to him. The second EFF squad makes its way to their location finally. The POW is heading right towards them. They can't allow the Zaku to get into the hands of EFF. Remember, even though Grandpa Gundam is out on the battlefield, most Zeon soldiers think that they are the only ones with mobile suits. The POW, who doesn't want to fight, recognizes that this is too much power for one soldier, and it is getting to him. Cuaran has no choice but to kill his comrade and destroy the Zaku, so EFF won't get a hold of it. It is a very tense moment. Cuaran hesitates. Right before he yells the orders to kill his teammate, EFF fires first, laying waste to the Zaku. Cuaran is upset and tells his team to retreat. Back at their base, Commander Cameron chastises him, but ultimately overlooks his faults so long as they keep this mission hush-hush. He also seems to be over this war. He heads back to his team where they are happy and enjoying their free time, but Cuaran looks to space, to his home on Side 3. Cuaran is on the toilet talking to Sol in regards to supplies. Sol mentions that he can't bribe the supply run into giving them more supplies because there is significantly less supplies during this run. However, Sol found out that a shipping container from the supply run fell off course and dropped down in the east. He wants Sol to go out and pick it up. Cuaran sneaks out to find Commander Cameron taking a shit and yelling at Cuaran for using the senior officer bathroom. I am not going to show this page, but her legs are crossed on the toilet. Yeah, she ain't peeing. She also orders him to find a particular wine. Alright, cool. We got the fan service out of the way. Let's move on. Frostel is in amazement by ants as she has never seen them in the wild. She has most likely never seen any animals in the wild. Space Noids have a very clinical view of life, it seems. She likes watching them when she is off duty, but Cuaran mentions that she isn't off duty. They prep for a mission. Frostel is joining in the cargo truck, driven by a man named Jorg. Jorg? Not George, Jorg. Even if his name is George, I'm calling him Jorg. Sol, in a DOP, goes out and finds the downed cargo supply. Meanwhile, Cuaran and Frostel change into civilian clothes and head into a nearby city. While in the city, Frostel watches in horror as Zeon soldiers terrorize a civilian. The team splits up and Cuaran goes in to visit a local bartender. He notes that most Zeon soldiers are assholes, but he seems to like Cuaran. The bartender notes that the group in the back are Fetty soldiers disguised as civilians. They speak loudly of their mission. Cuaran overhears them mentioning that a booby trap is set in the downed cargo supply crate as a distraction for their mission. They head out and Cuaran follows, but they notice him tailing the Fetties. He quickly puts his finger in his mouth and throws up, pretending to just be a drunk. They walk away, but suddenly Frostel comes over and calls out Cuaran's rank, giving him away. The men turn around and begin firing on him. Cuaran grabs Frostel and takes cover. He shoots blindly at the team and says he hates guns, which is a little weird. I guess he's on a WAPA all day. He shoots their commander in the cheek. Another Fetty pulls out a grenade when suddenly Jorg comes in with the cargo truck, hitting the Fetties, but the guy pulled the pin on the grenade. Cuaran's team takes off and the explosion goes off. The Fetties aren't harmed. They ignore them as they prepare for their mission. A few blocks away, Fetties begin attacking the city. They take out a Type 61 tank and a Zaku. All hell is breaking loose around Cuaran's team, but they can't help. They have to get back to Sol. Meanwhile, Sol is heading back to base, not realizing that he is carrying a bomb. The Fetties are using the M101A3 Regina. We saw the Regina in action in the Gravity Front, but this weapon was a necessity for EFF during the beginning of the 1-year war. The Zaku was clearly superior to the Type 61 tank, and they needed something with more versatility. This weapon is referred to as an anti-mobile suit missile. The wire-powered missiles handle very well, even under intense levels of Minovsky particle density. The Fetties are able to take out a Zaku that almost crashes into the cargo truck. Everyone wants to help, but Cuaran tells them they have to get back to Sol. The undercover Fetties get back to their squad. A bunch of civilians notice their presence and tell them that this is a Zeon-occupied territory. He tells the man that he is here to save the people, and they take off. They got back into their uniforms in the city because if they were caught pretending to be guerrillas, they would be executed on the spot. If they are in their uniforms, Zeon soldiers can't kill them and have to abide by the Antarctic Treaty. Cuaran heads back to the supply truck on the outskirts of town. He pulls out a map and sees if he can make it to Sol's location in time. Frostel and Jorg heads back to the base while Cuaran takes off in the WAPA. He doesn't even know if the bomb is on Sol's DOP, but he has to hurry just in case. We flash back to February of UC 0079 on Side 3. Guile and Cuaran are talking about peace agreements. Of course, this took place in Antarctica and was essentially supposed to be a peace agreement. That is until General Revel escaped custody and made a speech to the people, causing the war war to be drawn out. This is where the two meet Soul. They are training, and Soul is struggling to keep up. Cuaran grabs him and helps push him to the finish line. Back in the present, Cuaran is able to find the DOP. He shoots off a flare gun. The DOP is able to see it. We get throwaway dialogue about how comms are down. I was going to say, how does no one have a radio in this situation? They notice it is Cuaran. He uses a coded message. Soul is able to make it out. Drop, cargo, bomb. Soul goes out and ejects the cargo, but it gets caught on the cargo bay. He grabs an axe and tries to push the cargo out. They hit some turbulence, and he almost falls off the DOP, barely grabbing onto the cargo. Cuaran does that move in Halo where you launch the hovercraft off a ramp and go into the air really high. Soul sees Cuaran. He chops off the cargo and jumps towards Cuaran's Wappa. The cargo falls and explodes. In the DOP is a bunch of beautiful USO girls who Soul picked up earlier. The girls thanks Cuaran for saving their lives. They are going to have a good time tonight. Everyone is getting laid. Last episode, we saw Cuaran and his team save a bunch of USO performers. These performers are known as the Comfort Corps. The soldiers gather around as the Comfort Corps does their performance. I guess this is the second best thing to getting laid. While the show is going on, Commander Cameron chastises Cuaran for not bringing back the wine she ordered him to bring back. Of course, because of the bomb planted, they were unable to bring back the wine and bring back supplies they originally needed. He rushes out of her office and bumps into Frostel. She walks into Cameron's office and gives her report. She tells Frostel to take a load off and pours her a glass of wine. She tells her it is simply juice. Wink, wink. This is because she is still underage. I assume they are going off of Japanese laws, and in Japan, you can drink and smoke at the age of 20, and the age is considered an adult in Japan. Hatachi is the word for 20-year-old, and is a special word and doesn't actually follow the same grammar as, say, a 19-year-old. While this is happening, drunken soldiers are making a fool of themselves on stage. The next performance is a cello player, but the cello player begins playing an elegy that stops everyone from complaining. This happens to be an old requiem from the pioneering days, aka during the construction of the colonies. It is a song dedicated to those who died in space during the cultivation of the colonies. Cuaran makes it to the show to hear the song. Guile mentions that his grandpa used to hum this song to him when he was younger. It makes him cry. This song instantly sends Cuaran back to the past, where he witnesses his parents getting killed. It appears as though they saved him from what looks like a colony gassing. This memory is still very vivid in his head. He bums himself out and leaves, but is confronted with a girl named Ares. She thanks him personally for saving them from the bomb. He seemed to be very smitten by her and asks her out to go see the stars. He says the one line that no women can turn down: "Hop on the back of my bike." They leave the base so they could get free of light pollution and be able to see the stars. While Frostel and Cameron are talking, a woman comes barging in. Cameron tells Frostel to leave the room immediately. She chugs her wine and leaves in a rush, not realizing she is now drunk. Cuaran tries to make his move on Ares and fails. Back with Cameron, we learn that this is Meryl, Cameron's sister. It appears that she is a part of the investigation team that is sent in to do inspections on commands. She infiltrated the Comfort Corps because an inspector most likely wouldn't be welcomed with open arms, so they have to go full secret shopper on certain bases. The two begin arguing about their family. It appears that their father sided with Zeon Daikum and the Rals and refused to acknowledge the Zabi family. Cameron shares her father's feelings, as she doesn't want to associate with the Zabis at all. Meryl says this is most likely why Cameron is in command of a recon team in the middle of nowhere instead of leading a charge on the front. She also mentions that they have been in a stalemate for a while, but EFF has started developing mobile suits, and the stalemate is leaning towards EFF and not Zeon. Of course, we know that Amado and the RX-78-2 will soon help shift the tides of war. Cuaran returns after getting rejected to find Frostel drunk and Jorg fixing his gun. She yells at him for being horny, while Cuaran wonders who gave a minor alcohol. Both are in a similar mood. They both lay their heads low in shame. The next day, the Comfort Corps leaves the base, and Cuaran goes out on his next mission. September 10th, UC 0079. The front line's boundary at the Far East region. Two Zakus from the 408th are hiding in the brush, waiting to make their move. Cuaran is on top of a hill, scouting and giving orders. They spot a Type 61 tank. The enemy is on the move. EFF suddenly stops. The Minovsky particle density increases like crazy. It is clear that based on the Minovsky particle density, you can make an assumption about approaching enemy forces. The Minovsky density was so high that Cuaran instantly calls for a retreat. But at that moment, a fly manta approaches. It embarrassingly took me a long time to realize that this was the manta because this design was so good compared to the original OG Gundam design. The fly manta is an atmospheric bomber that also happens to be a high maneuverable unit. It has bombs, lots of bombs, as well as 30mm cannons on the nose. If you ever wondered how EFF still mated with Zeon for 8 months, it was because of these puppies, albeit a scorched earth kind of a way. They begin dropping bombs on the location of the Zaku's. Commander Cameron's team get a message from the 408 right before getting disconnected. Frostel tells her that it is Cuaran's team and they only happen to have 2 Wappas out. Meanwhile, Cuaran is on the battlefield facing an EFF soldier. Suddenly, a Gundam cliche enters the chat. However, usually we have the stereotype of a Zeon woman and an EFF male. This time we have it switched, so the cliche is a little different. I make fun of it, but this cliche is what makes Gundam Gundam. When you have 2 opposing forces talk it out instead of fighting. It is a necessity, but I'm still gonna make fun of it. We cut back to 1 hour prior to when the bombs were dropping. One of the Zaku's come out of hiding and shoots the Sky Manta. It takes out one of the Magella attack tanks, but the Zaku is able to take out the Manta. However, it is exposed, and one of the Type 61 tanks takes out one of the Zaku's. The other Zaku comes out of hiding and uses his Heat Hawk on the tank. If I was this guy right here, I would be pissing my pants. Cuaran catches up with his teammate Ramas right as he gets shot down. Cuaran gets out of his Wappa and grabs Ramas' body right when his Wappa explodes. It is an EFF Jeep shooting at them, but suddenly a heavy Fort class runs over the Jeep. Was that friendly fire? That was friendly fire. We talked about the heavy Fort class in our Igloo coverage, but this is a mobile command base. Like the Big Tray class, which this unit is developed from, the heavy Fort also uses propulsion and functions as a hovercraft. This whole sequence is a Rube Goldberg machine of death. I'm not doing it justice, so go look at the art. The Type 61 is able to take out the remaining Zaku, but it is able to kick over the tank, destroying both units. Cuaran looks over to see that Ramas is dead. Cameron is trying to figure out what happened to Cuaran when a dispatch rider comes in. Back on the battlefield, Cuaran pets his Mustang and detaches the Mazura MG-74S machine gun. When piloting the Wappa, the pilot must take one hand off the wheel in order to fire it. But when detached, it's essentially a minigun. He looks around and sees nothing but death, until he runs into an EFF soldier. They have a standoff. The dispatch riders tell Cameron that a recon team has been reassigned to a mission to find EFF breaches. This means that Cuaran's search will have to wait. Cameron calls for Sol. The EFF soldier passes out from blood loss. Cuaran treats her wounds. She wakes up again and doesn't want his help. He pulls out a pole impaled into her abdomen. She writhes in pain. The recon team is arguing with the dispatch team as they give them their new orders. It is now nighttime and the team hasn't rescued Cuaran yet. He wonders where they are. Meanwhile, Operation V is almost ready to go. We see the gun cannon, the gun tank, and Grandpa going through tests. Cuaran wonders what to do. He can't exactly carry a wounded soldier. He goes and talks to his Wappa. He then goes and takes some parts from Ramas' Wappa. He asks Ramas' dead body if it is okay if he borrows some of his parts. Uh-oh, he's talking to dead bodies. He fixes up his Wappa and heads back to find that the EFF soldier is gone. Suddenly, he is shot at. Cuaran grabs his machine gun and aims it at the girl. But instead of shooting her, he grabs a rock and throws it at her face, knocking her out. That'd be kind of funny if he accidentally killed her. He wonders where she was hiding that gun. Cameron is trying to figure out why the enemy forces are being so aggressive on the front lines. They think it may be a land battleship, similar to the Dobde class. She said if that were the case, it would be the recon team's fault for not having any intel on this mysterious battleship. She wants more Luggins doing recon, but they definitely need more people like Cuaran with boots on the ground intel. Cuaran is making his last minute fixes on his Mustang when the girl wakes up. He says that he doesn't want to kill and just wants to get back home to space. From what I know, there wasn't a draft. Someone should have told him that he didn't need to join the military. She says she doesn't feel the same way because she experienced her home get destroyed by a colony. He gives the EFF soldier a flare gun to use to try to rescue herself. Cuaran tries to take off, but the EFF soldier holds the gun to her head. He says that isn't how a flare gun works. She then points it at him. He says that isn't how a flare gun works. She shoots off the flare gun at Cuaran. He gets a little burnt up. The smoke alerts both Sol and his Wappa and an EFF squad. Cuaran books it out of there and runs into Sol. He catches Cuaran up on the frenzy that is going on with the rest of his company. Cuaran tells Sol that Ramas is dead. Meanwhile, an EFF plane is scouting the area. I have no idea what this plane is. If you have any info on this, let me know in the comments. The plane is scouting for the Heavy Fort class ship making its way through Zeon territory. Also, one thing to note is that the Heavy Fort class ship didn't exist until Igloo retconned them into the 1-year war, and it would make sense for EFF to have a land-based ship like the Dobde class. However, the Big Tray class, which the Heavy Fork is based off of, was seen in the original Mobile Suit. Before we start, the people in the comments informed me that the plane we saw hovering over the Heavy Fort class ship last time was the Dragonfly. The Dragonfly is a prop plane that was very low tech, but very helpful in areas of heavy Minovsky particle density. It is hard to detect, both visually and on infrared radars. Because it requires little runway to launch, it could be sortied from a Big Tray class. This thing is really slow and flies low to avoid being spotted. The deputy commander is talking to Sol about what he thinks is going on the front. Sol believes that they may have a land fortress and wants to focus on scouting in areas they haven't received any intel from yet. The way the deputy commander is framing this makes him seem like he's trying to gather dirt on Cameron. Frostel is overhearing the conversation, but someone comes in to relieve her of duty for the night. She is done with her shift. As she leaves, she notices Cuaran daydreaming. He was thinking about the colony drop on Australia. Frostel tells her what happened with Cameron. They wanted to send someone out to scout for him, but Cameron was ordered to shift all focus on the front. It was ultimately luck that got him rescued. He says he is grateful, but not to worry about it. He goes to talk to the chief engineer, who tells him that the fixes to his Iron Mustang will be about 15 hours. He wants the chief to increase the output so he can make jumps more efficiently. He tells Cuaran it will make it a little unstable. He reminds him it isn't a plane. Guile and the 908th are noticing that EFF has Type 61 tanks everywhere. Back at the base, Cuaran gathers his team. They are working with some mercs, and they aren't really getting along. They head out in a bunch of weasels. We talked about the weasel in our breakdown of Requiem for Vengeance, but those that didn't watch it, let's break it down. The weasel, or simply armored vehicle, is a 6-wheeled, light armored vehicle that acts more as a scout unit. This unit can also turn into a boat and traverse water. It is fast, but ultimately weaker than a Magella attack tank or Magella Eins. It has a 37mm machine cannon, a machine gun, and a triple missile launcher. Loaded up on the weasel, everyone feels nervous. The mercs tease Cuaran that the weasel isn't as smooth as the Wappa. In reality, Zeon men are dying and people are grouping up to better survive. They may not want to be with one another, but Cuaran ensures them that they are going to complete their mission in one piece. It puts his mind at ease. Suddenly, you hear coming from the front. The driver yells out and apologizes to everyone for being stuffed into a coffin to die. Talk about an icebreaker. The soldier manning the turret notices something at his 2 o'clock, but he isn't fast enough, and he is gunned down. Cuaran gets out on the turret and notices EFF units. The weasel spreads out. One EFF soldier fires a bazooka of some sorts. It's kind of smaller than the Regina. It takes out one of the weasels. They all get out of the vehicles and take cover. They notice an EFF scouting team, which means more forces are not too far behind. Out of nowhere, it begins raining. He looks up at the rain to see a land fortress. It is the Heavy Fort class ship. He is in shock as his men await orders. He tells his men to retreat back to the weasels right as the Heavy Fort begins firing its twin cannons on the scouts. Cuaran drags his comrade, who has been shot, back to the weasel. Another soldier is shot in the head right in front of him. They get into the weasel and head into the water. EFF loses track of them and they send out a mongoose to find them. Luckily, they are able to blend in with their environments quite well. We get a moment where Jorg and another soldier named Hans help each other and they become best buds. The rain has cleared up, but Minovsky particle density is quite high, so they can't get a message back to base. At the base, Frostel is on duty once again. Cameron says she looks tired and suggests she use her time to sleep, but Cameron also looks like she hasn't slept either. Jorg wants to head out on his own to the top of the hill to try to establish a connection with base using an antenna. Cuaran wants to go with him, but Jorg says he has to watch over his men. Hans decides to go with him. He has been shot, so another soldier tries to help him. As they head out, Hans asks Jorg how a merc came to help the recon team. He is silent. They ask him where he comes from, and he says, Side 2. Side 2, specifically the capital, Island Ifish, was the colony that was used during Operation British. Oh no, Operation British is Jorg's Vietnam. Back at the base, another soldier asks about Jorg. What's his deal? Why can't I get a read on this guy?
You can never read that guy.
Cuaran tells him that Jorg was really into the cause of Zeon independence, but once he saw his home come crashing down to Earth, he felt broken and lost interest in helping Spacenoid independence. He is now just here for the ride. Cameron suggests that his problem was finding some sense of justice in this to begin with. For Cuaran, this has always been a job that he carries out. Remember, all he wants to do is get back to Side 3. They get near the top and try to get a signal. No luck, unfortunately. Jorg heads up higher to the peak. Hans says he can't make sense of him. See, even Hans can't get a read on this guy.
I can never read that guy.
Hans is yelling at him when suddenly they get a signal. Back at base, they are able to pinpoint their location. However, they notice something from above, and seconds later, the peak of the mountain is destroyed. It was taken out by the mongoose. Jorg is dead. Back at the base, the 6th battle group is heading out and preparing for an all-out assault. They are even whipping out the Dobde-class ship for this one. Cuaran shows Guile Jorg's scarf. It seems that right before the mongoose attacked, Jorg pushed Hans out of the way and saved his life. Cuaran and Guile begin fighting with one another. Cameron and Frostel let the two fight it out. Sol eventually comes over and stops him. Meanwhile, the 6th Battalion is on the front and are able to push EFF forces back. The Dobde commander wonders why the Heavy Fort-class ship isn't showing up on the front. The chief was able to increase the output of the Wappa by 20%. Cuaran says it really is an unbroken horse now. His team is ready to sortie. He goes to talk to his men, and he sees Jorg. He is starting to see things. Their mission is to cut off a supply convoy at the flanks of the enemy forces. The 6th Battalion will handle the Big Fort class. He tells his men that he wants to end this so they could go back home. They all move out. The Big Tray class keeps pushing forward. Cuaran's men have almost reached his location. He notices that steering is a little harder with increased output. Once they reach their location, they begin scouting and notice that it isn't a supply convoy. The Big Tray class struggles over the hills, so they send out the Black Hound team, which is a team of hover trucks. Cuaran tries to call this into headquarters. The Big Trade class is at a disadvantage here, and the Dobde commander thinks they have it on the run, but they aren't ready for an incoming attack from the hover trucks. The Zakus guarding the Dobde begin attacking using their machine guns. They hit one truck, and it goes up in flames. Zeon realizes they have landmines. This is specifically the heavy mine used by the RTX 440 ground assault type gun tank, which was also used to kamikaze a Dobde in the gravity front. Cuaran and his team are the only ones who realize that the Dobde has fallen into a trap. Cuaran and his men go out to assist the Dobde. We have a moment where one of the Dobde Zakus just looks at a mine right before it explodes right in his face. Gold. As Cuaran goes in, the Dobde gets bombarded. While the hover trucks distracted them, the Big Tray took an aim from kilometers away. After firing at nothing, they decide to retreat, but the Big Tray sends out another volley. The Dobde and the 6th Battalion is destroyed. Cuaran and his team retreats. This caused the Zeonic front to be pushed back. After the event, things went back to normal, but they were eventually visited by the members of the Court of Inquiry in regards to the incident with the Dobde. They are investigating Cameron. They take a recess when Cuaran comes along. It appears that the deputy commander is trying to blame this all on Cameron. Cuaran and Cameron's sister Meryl listens through the walls as their investigation continues. The deputy commander tells the higher-ups that Cameron ignored direct orders during this operation. It is clear that this investigation is all for show, and they are looking to pin the blame on Cameron. She begins yelling at her higher-ups, stating that she would never allow for one of her men to be left behind. They decide that she must return to her homeland. I don't think this is a direct discharge, but I'm not completely sure with the language used here. Time goes by, but the 908th continues on. Suddenly, everyone rushes to watch something being broadcast to the entire Earth sphere. Cuaran goes to see Giran Zabi mourning the death of Garma, trying to raise the morale of the people of Zeon. Cameron is packing up her office. It appears she was dishonorably discharged. Which is weird. I don't think incompetence is dishonorable, but I guess they're really throwing her under the bus for being a part of the Daikum loyalists during the Zabi reign. Her sister Meryl comes in and tells her about some special intel that she recently acquired from the intelligence department. And by acquired, I mean stole. Meryl shows her photos taken from North America of White Base and the RX-78 Gundam. Deputy Commander is now in charge of the 908th, which seems to be all according to his plan. Sol says that he didn't think cowards could be so ambitious, while Cuaran is concerned as he thinks his chances of surviving this war has gone down significantly without Cameron in command. Cuaran and Cameron don't seem to like each other, but it is clear that he respects and trusts her with his life. Frostel comes bursting into Cameron's office, crying and begging her to let her come with her. She calms her down and tells her she will return once she gets this discharge removed. She hands Frostel a tissue. Cameron gathers up the platoon. She wants to split them up in the squads to run mock battles against Guile and his Zaku. They're confused as they never had training against mobile suits. They never had to. If a commanding officer is telling me this though, I would kinda take a hint and realize things are about to get worse. Cuaran, of course, is excited to run these mock battles. The deputy commander comes in and demands to know why she is trying to take command after being relieved of duty. As he yells at Cameron, he notices the men are excited for her command. Cameron bows to the deputy commander and says please. She has a higher rank than the deputy commander, so this is a person of higher status putting themselves in a lower position. The deputy commander's pride forces his hand, and he allows her to run the mock battles. They treat this as a going away party for her in the 908th. Cuaran wonders if there is a prize for the best squad. Frastel comes in with a crate and opens it up, revealing copious amounts of wine. I guess off page, Cameron finally got that wine she wanted. Everyone is pumped up to run training exercises. Cameron is on top of the hill with, is that the Samson? Neat. The Samson is one of those vehicles that is never seen outside of OG Gundam, so it is nice to see it here in use. The Samson is simply a mobile suit transport vehicle. It was used to transport the Goofs to the Black Tri-Stars. It has a pair of 2-barrel machine gun turrets. Like the Magella attack tank, the top can detach and function similar to a hover truck in a vehicle called the Samson Top. And yes, they made a Gunpla of the Samson. It does detach and can carry your other Gunpla. It is glorious. Bandai, bring back the Samson. Everyone is in position. Cameron signals to begin the mock battle. Guile is hesitant, but Cameron tells him to use the machine gun. He is using paintball rounds and takes out P.O. Bimpar. That looked like it hurt. Even though it is paint rounds, it is still a freaking giant 120mm round. That could still kill you. Frastel says this exact thing to Cameron, but she says that everyone knows what they are in for. I mean, he's out. This guy's not going anywhere. I'm sure something's broken. She says feeling the pain is what makes it training. Is that like some type of saying? Cuaran goes in and throws a smoke grenade. Guile thinks that they are going to take out his legs, so he jumps away, but Cuaran planned for this. Sol is waiting for him with a Langbale anti-rocket. I can't find any info on this unit, but it reminds me of a future version of the N-72 Law used during World War II. Since this is a mock battle, he is just painting and locking onto the target. Cameron monitors the data of his shots. The data says that Sol's attack would simply destroy the back armor and the unit would still be alive. They need to get in closer. Another squad goes out while Cuaran and Sol take a break. They are completely covered in paintballs. Cuaran has an idea for their next mock battle. He pulls out an adhesive charger. Out in the mock battle is the first squadron. They're trying to take down the Zaku by doing a Star Wars, but the Wappa just isn't strong enough. Sol is looking at the adhesive charger. He asks if he took the fuse out of these bombs for the mock test. Cuaran says of course. Sol is looking at the adhesive charger. Sol takes one and puts it on his Wappa. He says that they need to get 50 centimeters close for it to stick to the mobile suit. They will have to get creative. Cuaran wants to prove that mobile suits aren't the only thing that matter on the battlefield. Squad 1 is out, and it is time for Cuaran and his team once again. They head out and attack the mobile suit. Guile shoots at Cuaran with the 120mm gun. They push past Guile and head to the forest, luring him in. They take cover under the trees while the Zaku chases. They keep chasing the unit until they see a ditch. The squad quickly ducks under the ridgeline, and Guile, in his mobile suit, goes right over them. Now with the mobile suit's back turned, they can rush in and begin planting the adhesive bombs. This is the exact technique that Cuaran will use when he goes up against Amado in the future. He has planned this technique ahead of time. They aim for areas where the armor is weaker as well as the exposed wires on the Zaku. Cuaran does his new jump technique to get high and throws a bomb on the mono eye sensor. Guile gets out and realizes they are bombs.
Cameron asks Guile if he thinks he would be able to successfully disarm the bombs.
He says only if he is able to stop time, which is interesting because we know that it can be done by a new type, as Amado in the future will, in fact, be able to disarm the bombs. The team celebrates. Cameron is proud of Cuaran for being so creative with so little. She tells him that she will be back, so don't die. The next morning, she heads out. The entire 908th comes to see her off. Things, of course, went back to normal. Sol, Guile, and Cuaran are having coffee and making a plan for the potential prototype Gundam that may make its way through the territory soon. Sol wonders if they will be shipped out to a new location, but Cuaran doesn't think the commander has a spine. He goes over to the hangar and looks at his iron Mustang. We cut to the future after the events of the original Gundam episode. He and his team is successful at placing bombs on the Gundam, but Amado was fast enough to deactivate them all before they went off. At the end, they go and tease the white baby.
base crew. As they take off, even Cuaran is taken aback by how young Amuro was. Back at the base, he is being interrogated by Zeon higher-ups. He thinks he is in trouble, but rather, they want to document this as a guideline and tutorial to teach others how to take down the Gundam. Outside in the base, everyone is packing up. The front is being moved, and it is clear that this base is about to be abandoned. Guile comes running over to Sol, Cuaran, and Frostel. He tells them that they have been reassigned to Odessa. And that will do it for this episode. Cuaran and his team was reassigned to Odessa. What happens to his team is unknown. Did they escape, or were they killed during the battle? We will never know until another writer comes along and picks up this story. I would like to see a follow-up story with his team doing something in Odessa, but I kinda know how the battle turns out, so their survival is very unlikely, and even if it is, it's a grim story. What do you think? Would you want to see a follow-up to this series? There was something about this team that makes me want to go back and learn more about them. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. But that will do it for now, new types. Remember, when running from a mobile suit, just duck. Peace.